All right. Okay.
Okay, trying to. Can you guys hear us? Can you hear me now?
Can you type in the chat?
I can hear you, but I'm getting terrible reverb. It's repeating about 5 times whatever you say.
we will continue to cover the rest of the agenda, but we won't be able to vote because we need the participants online to make our quorum. So now we are lacking a quorum, but we'll continue covering our material. Okay.
Madam Chair, this is John Easter. I can hear you loud and clear now. I hope the others online can too.
Great. Okay. So check John Easter in as a participant. All right. Michael Testerman, can you hear us? He is muted. All right. Will somebody else online?
Here I am.
Hey, Michael, can you hear us okay?
Yes.
It's baffling as to why we had everybody online and then it just vanished. We just disconnected somehow. So thank you for your patience. Okay, Michael, would you introduce yourself, please? Who do you represent?
I represent the Virginia Association of Railway Patrons.
And John, we failed to get your affiliation.
Yes, I'm with Chamber RVA.
Okay, thank you. All right. Would somebody else attempt an introduction?
Hi, my name is Sarah Wiziger, and I'm a new member for the League of Women Voters of the Richmond metropolitan area.
Well, welcome, Sarah.
Thank you.
We welcome you here. You are filling big shoes for Virginia Poll. So she's been on the CTAC for probably 20 years. So we welcome you and hope that you will enjoy your participation as much as Virginia.
Thank you.
Is your alternate also here?
She is not. She wasn't able to attend today.
Okay. The alternate is Karen Rosenblum, and she is replacing Mary Crutchfield. So thank you. We appreciate the League of Women Voters participation. All right, another individual online.
I'll go next. My name is Robin Payne. I'm not Vicki Connolly. I just used her login, and I am with Drive to Work. And you have kindly invited us to present today, so we're happy to be here. Thank you.
And I'm the real Vicki Connolly. Like, remember, they'll tell the truth. I'm the real Vicki Connolly.
Yeah. I vote for you. Yeah. So
Thank you for having us today. We're anxious to tell you all about Drive to Work.
glad we got you back
Thank you.
online.
My dog seems to be anxious too, so if you hear noises in the background.
All right. All right. And we still have another person on.
Yes, hi, Martin Walker. I'm a senior research associate at the Virginia Tech Transportation Institute. And thanks for inviting me.
Thank you for being with us. All right. Okay. Thank you, everybody. We will have some new faces as we enter this new year of CTAC participation. We do have some missing slots, however. If you could look at your list that was over with the materials of there's a number of vacancies, and we've called this to your attention because we would like to have a full contingent of representation. If you see that there is somebody for your organization who might be willing to serve on CTAC, please let us know, because Ken's going to need to contact the county administrators and ask them to attempt to fill the slots. So we at this point have Charles City County has no representative or alternate. There's a number that are lacking alternates, which that's an important position because often they come to the meetings and learn what's going on and become more involved, so that in the case of having to step forward and participate in a meeting as a voting member, they will be informed. We've mentioned the change at the League of Women Voters. We also need to fill a slot for Bud Vi, who left us this past year, and for Richmond Area Bicycling Association. So please look at your list, and if there are vacancies that need to be filled for alternate or for the primary member position, and you have some ideas, please let us know. Okay.
Madam Chair, I think that
Yeah.
what we would like to do would be to, with the concurrence of the CTAC is to start contacting the county city administrators and advise them that, your jurisdiction is entitled to X number of additional representatives. And, we would respectfully request that they appoint those as they see fit.
In Rrtpo, Richmond, and Chesterfield are entitled to 2 representatives.
Right.
And I did inform Pat O'Bannon after our last meeting
Okay.
that I am now the only one.
right,
There should
right.
probably be more representation
Yeah.
as, as we're allowed.
Right.
And so I know at the time she said they were working on it and she
Sure.
would be trying to get somebody from other sides from
Right.
around
Right.
Enrico. So I will remind her again.
Okay. All right, thank you. Okay, if you've had a chance to look at the meeting agenda, if you have any additions or to the agenda. See, let's look at the minutes from the July 15th meeting. And see if there are any additions or corrections to the minutes. And anybody who wishes to make a motion, we will proceed.
So moved.
Okay, it's been moved
Second.
and seconded that we approve the July 15th CTAC meeting minutes. And now we move into the open public comment.
We have
heard
not
from anybody?
received any
Okay,
request for comment.
okay. Moving on to the CTAC chairman's report. We have requested that he bring us some souvenirs from France, but other than that, we have no chairman's report. Okay. The Rrtpo updates. Ken, we will need a verbal report on the TPO and TAC meeting.
Yes, ma'am.
July.
These items were inadvertently left out of your agenda packet, and we will see that they are emailed to you today or tomorrow. But let me just give you a very quick summary concerning the Rrtpo Policy Board and TAC meetings report. This is for the July 7th and August 10 Technical Advisory Committee meetings, and the August 5th and September 2nd TPO Policy Board meetings. They undertook and approved a TIP amendment request from GRTC. There was approval of what's called the Conformity Assessment. This is the air quality conformity assessment. This is a critical part of adopting the long-range transportation plan. Approved the public review comment period for Connect RVA, the long-range plan. And as I think everybody knows, that comment period, I think, is closing or has closed. I hope that you were able to participate in one of the public meetings. There was a discussion about the transportation alternative set aside. So again, I will send you a copy of the summary of that. And with that, I'll move to the current work efforts.
Okay.
Current work efforts, as I mentioned, we're working on Connect RVA 2045, the long-range transportation plan. We had our last open house this past week down at the Fairfield Library. We've had a number of different public open houses during the course of this, doing all that we can to try to engage the public, COVID-19 notwithstanding. So now we're moving towards adoption and approval of the plan. We have a hard deadline because if we don't get it done by then, we run the risk of not getting the federal funding. But don't anticipate that there will be any roadblocks or last minute hurdles to clear with that. We're continuing to work on the Ashland Trolley Line Trail Study. Working on a regional bicycle and pedestrian plan. We have an active transportation work group that is working on bicycling and pedestrian efforts. Has been supporting Enrico on some of the work they're doing. We also are helping to staff what's called Vision Zero, which is an effort to reduce fatalities to 0. That group actually met this morning. So again, I will be glad to send you these written reports later today.
And CBTA.
And I don't have anything to report for CBTA.
CBTA, for those of you who aren't familiar with it, is the Central Virginia Transportation Authority. And they have been in existence now for a little over a year. And if you try to follow all their meetings, you would have a very busy calendar. So the TPO staff is also staffing the CBTA, and that is a big undertaking.
It's
So
doubled our number of meetings.
I would say probably more than double. Yeah.
Their policy board is meeting next Friday, I think. But they have, like the TPO, they have a technical advisory committee. They've also had some work groups. They've been looking at transit governance, trying to determine what is the best structure going forward for governing the delivery of public transportation services. So a lot of activity taking place with CBTA.
Okay. Anything else? I did want to call out and thank Ken for putting this together, the ABCs of the RRTPO. For those of you who are new, it is a whole separate language when we start talking about acronyms for transportation. So this might be helpful interpretation guide for you. If you are interested in the future, we could also have additional workshop maybe prior to our CTAC meeting to help you understand the various plans and the funding stream. So let us know.
And if there are other acronyms that we need to add to the list, I'd be glad to do that.
Okay. All right, well, let's move into new business, and we have some guests with us, with Robin and Vicki, who are going to talk about Drive to Work. So y'all are up next. Let's see if we have any presentation loaded for them, Si.
I sent one to Ken and I could try to screen share, although I have not done that before, but let me just click the button and see what happens.
Watch a bunch of porno come up for a second.
Okay, I did it. I don't know how to get back, but here we go.
Okay.
We just wanted to tell you a little bit about who we are, where we've been, and where we're going today. Since I'm the oldest, I'll start with where we've been. Drive to Work formed in 2007 by a former Secretary of Public Safety for the state of Virginia, who was then retired partner from law from McGuire Woods. Our mission is, at his understanding at the time when he started seeing how difficult it was for people to get a driver's license for whatever reason, if they had lost it. Our mission is to help people who are marginalized, who are previously incarcerated, they're low income, and they need to work, and they can't work because they don't have a job. Since we began, we have helped over 2,400 families or individuals and their families. We provide legal service, and we are, at this time, and always have been, the only organization in Virginia addressing this issue solely. Our clients that we have to be below 2 times the poverty level. They cannot afford to go into a downtown law firm and say we need help. We help the clients who have run up against barriers that they simply cannot overcome. Restricted licenses for drug revocations. We work with people who have, DUI restorations, that they've had that. A lot of these people, a lot of it's child support suspensions. It may not have anything to do with their actual ability to drive. It's just been something that they were caught up in. We've had clients who had issues at one time for as many as 9 courts, and they simply are not capable individuals. I'm not, you're not, to go into 9 courts and resolve an issue. So we try and have worked for since 2007, and my math's not good today, 14 years, to help people get back on their feet. Our goal is to give them a second chance. And we have expanded, the first year we had 4 clients. Obviously, we've expanded. We now have driving school that we are actually a certified driving school, so that if our clients or anyone that can't afford to pay the big prices need to come and have driving school issues done, if they need a 3-time fail, if they need a driver improvement clinic, we've got that for them. We know it makes a difference. It gives people without a job more job prospects because they have to be able to drive on the job, more opportunities. For so long, the bus route did not go into the short pump area in Richmond. So people couldn't even look for a job where the biggest mall was and the most business. It gives them independence, and they're not risking additional convictions and going back to jail anymore. So we know that it's important. We know, as I said, we've restored over 850 now. I think that number is getting pretty close to 900 driver's licenses for people since we started. And this gives them, this is one of our clients and her daughter, it gives them a chance to get out there, get a job, and be a contributing member of the community. Robin, you want to talk about anything here, our client demographics or?
Sure, you can kind of get an overall view here. It's a lot to digest, mostly male. I'm finding with the prison facilities, the majority in the male prisons are, they're older, African-American. In the female prisons, it's mostly white women and drug-related, alcohol-related issues.
And we are doing a big, and Robin will tell you more about our DOC program, but the reason she mentions within the prisons, we're in there too. So she'll tell you about our DOC program.
This is a great story. This is Casey and his was then very pregnant partner. He came to us. He'd been incarcerated for over 17 years at State Farm, and he got out. We presented the program in State Farm. He learned about us. He came to us. He was ready to work hard to restore his driving privileges. He, since this time, got his license back. He's living with his wife and their brand new baby in Newport News, and they bought a home together. And he got a CDL license. I think he said he was making about $74,000 a year. So he attended our luncheon, our virtual luncheon last year, and was a great spokesperson for us. And then we did a video that he had came and participated in. So I just love that story. You can see here, we don't just cover Richmond, we cover the whole state. And we work with voluntary attorneys throughout the whole state. 2 of our biggest corporations that have provided the volunteer attorneys are Cap One and Dominion. So they've been a huge help to us. These are some of our materials. Happy to send if anybody wants copies. We are now providing our materials in Spanish. We're trying to do more outreach into the Hispanic community. We're working on trying to get a grant to help us with that. We'd like to hire somebody who is fluent in Spanish. We are working with the extended learning facility in Chesterfield. They've offered translators for us free of charge, and they just get credit, and they've been a huge help to us for the few people who have reached out that, they can't speak Spanish at all and need a identity card. So, and then this is the program we've been talking about. Prior to COVID, we were in the majority of the prison facilities. We would go in, a lawyer would present the material. We order everybody's compliance summary, which shows, what's holding them back. At the end of the presentation, people could ask questions that directly related to their issues. Since COVID, we have produced a video with the seminar materials on it. So what we do now is there's a facilitator at the prison. They show the video. People watch it. We've sent them their compliance summaries. And then the facilitator at the prison calls a volunteer attorney and the attendees can ask questions. So it's like being there, but not quite. And that's so far has worked out really well. We've been doing that for a couple months now. And Vicki, you talk about advocacy because that kind of that's more was involved with you than before I came on.
One of the big roles that we play in the community, excuse me, I believe, is our advocacy, not only for our clients, but for all Virginians. Just two samples of the things that we have worked on, bills that we have worked on getting passed. One was when they changed the law so that if you failed your driving test 3 times, and you would be amazed at how many people do that, you had to go back through a 36-hour, 35-hour course of driving school course. That was hard for people that were working. That was like a full driver's ed course. So we worked with them for several years, and now you can do it in an 8-hour class. We have just recently, and I think it's approved. Is it to do online? We're waiting for the approval.
We're
that.
waiting.
We're still waiting.
Yeah.
So now they can take that class in 8 hours instead of 35. So that was something that helped everybody, not just our clients. What you see here was one of the biggest things, and it's kind of like we had worked on this. Everybody wanted this for years because the law that Governor Northam changed in 2019 that he signed, prior to his law, you could have your driver's license revoked for anything. I mean, you could be before a judge and have fines. You could owe court costs because you couldn't pay them, and they took your driver's license away. Well, half the time you got caught driving, and then you went to jail for driving without a license because it was your 3rd time. It was crazy to take people's license away for what they were doing. So we fought. We had great support in the House, and Governor Northam passed the law, or the law was passed, and he signed it, that you could no longer have your license revoked or suspended for owing fines and court costs. And on the day that he signed that, it released 600,000 people, I think was the number, 600,000+ people that automatically got their license back. This gentleman was one of our clients that you see talking to the governor. The gentleman to the governor's right is Randy Rollins, our founder. But the gentleman had come in, I think, to pay a fee to us or just to do some paperwork. And he was one of the ones that was going to be released because of this new law. And it's like, well, you don't owe us anything. And here's your driver's license. And there's the man that gave it to you. And it was just this perfect opportunity. So Governor Northam got to meet one of the benefactors of his law. And there he was. So this is something, and there's tons more, and I won't bore you with the others, but we have our finger, I guess, on the pulse of what's happening in the laws of the courts, and we work to make sure that it is right for all the people.
Just a
long answer to your short question.
Just a few slides. As Vicki said, we do have a driving school. It's open to everybody. You don't have to have been incarcerated. We do both a driving clinic, both in person. Here's a couple photos. And we also do online. And we've been working really hard to offer this 3 times fail class online. We think at this time we will be the only one in Virginia to offer that. These are just kind of a graphic of the classes that we do offer. I would say within, I hope the next month, we'll be able to offer that because a lot of people call who need that 3 times fail. So we also offer the same program in the prison facilities, which is great. So if a driving clinic is an issue for incarcerated individuals, then they can take it while they're there, and then that is marked off and they don't have to deal with it when they get out. This is just our contact information. We're in and around the Willow Lawn area, and that's kind of it. love to answer any questions if anybody has any.
Presentation. You've got some great success stories. Anybody have other questions? Yes.
Charlie Razzak with Hanover County. The brochures that you're talking about, are you going to send for distribution?
Absolutely. I can do either digital or I can send you, mail you a package. And what I'll do is I'll put our contact information in the chat. And honestly, I live in Hanover County. I'd be happy to come by and bring them to you.
This is Ken Lance with Plan RVA. If you'd like to send a digital copy to me, I can forward it to CTAC.
Thanks. That'd be great, Ken.
Do you want Spanish and English?
Sure.
Okay.
Have another question.
This is Susan Beals from Chesterfield. Have your clients had issues because of the DMV being closed over the last 18 months?
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Yeah. It's been really tough. We have no pull to get people in quicker, but yes, that has been a real problem.
2020 was just a very long year with very little results because we couldn't get into the courts, we couldn't get into the DMV, and we couldn't get into the prisons. So, but it is getting better. The courts are open. The DMV is open. It's just not available.
There's a backlog, as we all know.
I have to change my driver's license. I went to make an appointment back a month ago, and my appointment is, I don't know, it's either the end of this month or the 1st of October. It was 2 months to get an appointment, to get an address change on a driver's license. So, you know?
Another question. Did you find that during COVID, the transit systems had waived their fares to take transit? Did you find that had an impact on the number of people who needed a driver's license at that point because they had less of a barrier in taking transit, or was the issue that the buses weren't going where they needed to go anyway?
Well, the bus schedule was reduced tremendously. There were not as many buses running. I don't think it affected us at all. I think it was a good thing for people because, you know, the bus fare when you're working may not be that important, but when you just got laid off because of COVID and you need a bus, then it was helpful. I think it helped everybody. I'm glad they did it. I don't think it impacted us at all. Do you, Robin?
I don't, but I did get a call one day from a gentleman who couldn't drive. He wasn't sure what we did. He thought we helped people get to wherever they needed to go. He was looking to get to a job interview at one of the big Amazon facilities, and public transportation at that point didn't go there. So I obviously don't know what happened, but I mean, that is an issue.
Thank you. You're at back of buses, so you're getting attention throughout town. So that's
well, we love bus ads. It's been a big help for us. Lots of people call and have seen the bus ads, and I think it's really helped people waiving the fares. I think that has been great. So, you
know, right now we are waiving fees. We are waiving our processing fee of $25 because, you know, a year ago, 2 years ago, $25 might not have meant anything. It may not mean anything to a lot of people now, but it means something to a lot of people. And they may not want to do the $25 application fee to find out if it's the plan that's going to work for them. And that's how it works now. They send an application, $25. We pull their DMV record. We look at it, we review it. We tell them what it's going to take to get their license back and how much it's going to cost in legal fees and fines and whatever they have to do. Now they can get that information for free. Otherwise, they were paying $25 and then they might get the program and say, well, I can't afford to do it or I don't want to do it. And they've lost $25. So for now, until things lift or we go broke, we're doing a $25 fee waiver. And our portion of the legal fees, which are roughly 80% less than normal legal fees, we charge like 20% of what a for-profit lawyer would charge. So even on that, if they need help, we're offering a percentage off of their legal fees right now too. We're trying to get people moving and not let money be the issue, because they've got to get back to work. The community needs them working, and they need to be working.
Thank you. Appreciate your presence.
Another long answer.
Well, thank you for offering to send us the electronic copies as well.
Please feel free to refer to your people if you know anyone in your, I say clients because that's what we call them, but that you work with. We would love to help them.
Thank you. All right. Glad you could be with us today.
Thank you.
All right, we're going to shift gears to automated driving system. Hear about some new technology from Martin Walker with Virginia Tech Transportation Institute. Martin? Martin, are you trying to share your screen?
Yes. Can you see my screen?
Not yet.
How about now?
Okay. I think
Yes.
so. Yes, indeed.
Is that it? You got it?
Is you might want to shift to a different view. There you go.
How's that?
Great.
Okay, well, thank you for inviting me. Again, my name is Martin Walker. I'm a senior research associate at the Virginia Tech Transportation Institute. Just to give you a little sense about VTTI, depending on the metrics, we're probably within the top 3, depending on metrics, transportation institutes in the world. Pre-pandemic, we had over 500 research associates and personnel that worked at the Institute. I just retired 18 months ago from FMCSA, where I was the chief of research. And I joined the Institute. One of the very first things that I worked on was a proposal, truck fleet concept of operation for managing mixed fleets. We didn't believe at the time that there would be any trucking company that would start operating a level 4 autonomous vehicle without drivers all at once. We believed that trucking companies would integrate them into their current operations. What I'm going to do with my time is to provide you kind of a study overview, tell you about a truck queuing demonstration that we have recently completed. Just to give you a sense, the purpose of this grant, VTTI was very fortunate. We received 2 grants from US DOT that totaled $15 million, more than everyone else received. Other state received only 1 grant, but we were very fortunate and we got 2. The purpose of the grant is to demonstrate how motor carriers can integrate ADS-equipped trucks into their operation. We're working with a number of motor carriers to develop a trucking fleet concept of operations for deploying autonomous vehicles that will operate and move freight. Study goals really fall into the safety, data, deployment, and collaboration areas. You know, we want to be able to demonstrate how motor carriers will be able to safely integrate these equipped trucks on the U.S. transportation system. We want to provide U.S. DOT with data and that can use conduct safety analysis and potentially rulemakings that help modernize regulations, and then basically demonstrate how to integrate these vehicles in a productive, cooperative way on the existing freight ecosystem. And we include collaboration, which is really a broad and diverse group of stakeholders, which include government entities, universities, trucking associations, and private partners. This graphic kind of shows you the stakeholders that we'll be working with and provided letters of support for the study. Our lead technology developer is Pronto AI. They are located out in San Francisco. They have a long history. Nobody in this area have a long history, but they started this back in 2015, where they had the first autonomous beer delivery in Colorado. We have a number of trucking fleets that signed up: Schneider National, Hub Group, National Private Council, 6 state DOTs that are part of our stakeholder group. And we have a number of supporting organizations, include Travelers, one of the largest insurers for trucking. Texas Transportation Institute is on our team, CSA, and I-95 Corridor Coalition. This slide really summarizes the whole study. The project will tackle some of the potential barriers of deployment of ADS-equipped vehicles. VTTI and Pronto are developing an ADS installation maintenance guide for fleets. We are working with the Automated Commercial Motor Vehicle Working Group at CBSA to identify ADS inspection procedures. How are you going to inspect these vehicles? It's not likely to be at roadside, and I will kind of throw that in, given where they're going. How you're going to be able to collect information from the vehicle and then maybe transport it to motor carriers and/or to roadside. Pronto will demonstrate how to keep drivers engaged in the driving task as long as they're a safety operator in the vehicle. We know from a human factor standpoint, if you take away a driver's related task, then that driver is going to fill it with some unrelated task, which causes a problem. So there will be need until you actually take the driver out of the vehicle to keep that operator engaged. So Pronto has developed a system to do that. We have partnered with Travelers Insurance. It'll be one of the key concerns. You'll never deploy these systems if you can't insure them. And Travelers is working on a guide to how to insure these vehicles. We're working with TTI, which is a Texas Transportation Institute, which they are working on a ADS road readiness rating system. Basically, what freight routes or highways are best to use with ADS vehicles. So the integration of the highway with the system, and what are those characteristics that are needed, that could be used by state DOTs to try to, improve their highway systems in order to operate these types of vehicles on them. We have already been working for a number of years with FMCSA to develop safety metrics for these systems. I mean, NHTSA is, and NHTSA has a considerable amount of work ahead in determining, how to demonstrate that these systems are safe to operate on the roadways. You just don't allow them to operate without a human driver. You should have to be able to do some kind of metric. We are also looking at how you develop the data security and transfer protocols. Right now, when we collect data, it's transferred from Pronto to VTTI, and it goes into an FMCSA data repository that it can be used by the general public at some point, not yet, because we haven't produced enough data at this point, but it will be. And then lastly, we're working on cybersecurity documentation. Basically, Pronto is developing a best practices for cybersecurity with regards to these types of vehicles. We have a number of, next slide. We have a number of demonstrations that we plan on doing with this project. We have just completed a queuing in ports, and I'll tell you a little bit about that in a couple minutes. We will be doing a cross-country trip of an L4 ADS equipped truck, meaning it will go from the West Coast to the East Coast, probably end up in the Port of Virginia. I think probably inland port. We're looking at Front Royal, I think, is the latest thinking on that. And basically, the vehicle will drive itself without human input. So there will be a safety operator of all times, but he's not there to drive either forward or laterally. We then have we're going to do either a drayage operation or a exit to exit scenario. This is probably the scenario we believe that you will see the first applications of autonomous driving vehicles that will operate without a driver. It would be from an exit close to an interstate to probably another exit close to the interstate. There's a lot of operations like that in the US. And then we have a number 3 road shows where we're going to provide static and moving demos of ADAS and ADS technology. Just to give you a little sense, we had just completed the port queuing demonstration. The problem that most people realize with the ports is that the ships have gotten so much larger. They used to be able to carry 8,000 containers. Now they can carry 20,000 containers. The port facility hasn't changed all that much. And then the use of technology has helped. But what it has produced is some very long wait times, at times, not always, but at times at ports. And what the problem with long wait times is drivers are paid by the mile. This reduces a driver and a carrier's productivity because it burns up, the wait time burns up drivers' available hours of service. So there is the potential to use ADS equipped truck to allow the vehicle to drive itself. And then the driver could potentially change his duty status, go into the sleeper berth, leave the vehicle. I mean, there's a lot of potential changes that could happen in the way port operations are conducted. So what we did is a week-long demonstration where our technology partner, Pronto, picked up and delivered containers, and we collected data and video. And I'll show you a little video at the end of this happening at the Port of Oakland. Now, we operated with a safety operator in the vehicle at all times because that's required by California state laws. We did a tremendous of outreach on this demonstration project, which included, MARAD, the West Coast, the Port of Oakland, and of course, all the transportation organizations within the state of California. And the last but not least is the Border Protection. They are very important because we had other field operational tests where they don't like the idea that you have cameras on the vehicle because of potential understanding how the port operates and terrorism and so on. So they were very important to allowing us to operate within the Port of Oakland. This occurred the 24th to 28th of this year. We basically, the way the demonstration worked is a truck driver manually drives a truck to the back of the terminal queue, and the driver engages the ADS system. Truck automatically proceeds in the queue through the port until a time where it has to deviate to a position to be either loaded or unloaded. And then once that occurs, the driver disengages the ADS system and manually drives it off the port. So we did this for 5 days at the Port of Oakland, and we live streamed it with all the different stakeholders. We had some live drone footage you'll see in a minute. And here's, I'll just play this. There's no sound to this. It just shows that's the Pronto vehicle, and then there's the large number of camera systems on the vehicle. At this point, the truck is driving itself. And so there is a lead vehicle, and you'll see more of this as we go along. And just to give you a sense, there was a considerable kind of this ODD, this operational domain. There was a considerable refinement of the artificial intelligence and neural networks that it takes to drive the system, because what you find at a port is, well, probably pretty much like the rest of the world, is very aggressive driving. And cut-ins. So if you leave the following distance too far, then what you have is a lot of drivers cutting in. And if you keep too much distance, then drivers get a bit irate, beeping the horns, yelling, screaming. We had a little bit of everything. But this demonstrates, you know, that this vehicle is able to stay in line with the lead vehicle throughout the demonstration. Now we just speed it up because it can be the 6 hours of sitting here can be excruciating. So this was sponsored by FMCSA, of course, and I will say I have another project that I have a small role, and that's with the Virginia Port Authority, where we are going, VTTI is going to build an autonomous vehicle. One of the key problems in quite honestly, the Virginia Port facility is very forward-leaning. They're concerned about controlling the vehicle once it's in the port, particularly if, you know, drivers does a lot of communication tasks. You take that driver out, then you have to replace it somehow. So it's communicating with the vehicle where to go to either unload or to load, and then have the port do that. The vehicle can leave. So anyway, that's going to start later this year. Very excited about that project. And with that, I'm open to any questions.
Thank you, Martin. I do have a question to start with. You mentioned no driver, but there's a safety officer or safety person. Is that person in the cab of the truck, ready to take over in case there's a failure of the automated system?
Absolutely. I mean, I don't believe only one occasion have I seen a autonomous driving, a tech developer that has operated a vehicle without a driver. That occurred in Florida with Starsky Robotics. They did it on the Florida Turnpike for about 9 miles. We're not at the point where you can operate these vehicles safely without a safety operator. Now, it is coming. I will tell you that there are some of these developers that have told me within 2 years, they will, in certain operations, take that driver out of the driver's seat.
I'm sure they're motivated by their profit margins there. So yes, thank you. Any other questions? Charlie.
Charlie Resnick with Hanover County. A couple of thoughts. Which terminal are you dealing with in the Virginia port? Is it ATM or Norfolk International?
It is, and I forget, I don't know that, the name of the organization slips me. I'm not sure. It's been quite a while. You know, when you proposals, you hear 9 months later. It's one of the ports, I think in Norfolk.
I was just curious, but the real question I have is, where do we stand on the technology on the port side? The technology for the trucks seems to be there, but the technology at the ports seems to be something that, you know, that needs to be
Well,
advanced.
I'll offer opinion. Because we ran into this in California, it becomes a union issue, and basically the truck drivers love to see the facilities automated at the port, and the people who work at the port love to see truck drivers automated. It's more of an issue of not that technology isn't available or developed. It becomes the environment that you're operating in. And there's very strong unions still, which I think have somewhat slowed it down.
Okay, anybody else?
Yes, this is John Easter. I have a question. You mentioned that one of the concerns is that if drivers don't have anything to do, they start doing other stuff. And that there's been developed something to try and keep drivers engaged. Can you just give a really quick description of, the kind of thing that goes on there and how that works?
Well, automakers are doing the same thing. So GM has Super Cruise. And so if you take your eyes off the Ford roadway, or if you take your hands off the steering, the vehicle will warn you, and it will issue a number of warnings, and then the vehicle will stop in place. That what Pronto is doing, the same kind of thing. They basically will watch with their machine vision, will watch the Ford, making sure a driver has their eyes on the Ford roadway. If they don't, they'll give a warning, and then the vehicle will pull to the shoulder. And that's essentially, what most organizations are doing in order to keep people engaged.
Thank you.
All right, a lot of excitement to come in a couple of years. Thank you, Martin. All right, are we ready to move on?
I think we are, yes, to our last.
Okay.
last
All right,
topic of new
Sulab, you are on with Connect RVA 2045.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, members of the CTAC. I apologize that I was not able to join you in person, but let me share my screen first, and if it allows me, let me see. Yep. Okay, can everybody see my screen? Okay, great. So I'm gonna present to you about the Connect RVA 2045 long-range transportation plan, which is the federally required long-range transportation plan for the Richmond region, which we need to update every 4 to 5 years. I gave CTAC a presentation, I think, for the last time on May of this year. We were still through our process at that time, but at this moment, we are almost done with the process. We had our final public engagement period from August 15th to September 15th, I think, which ended yesterday. And we are in a process of compiling those comments now. But just to give you a summary of the plan organization in the long range transportation plan document. We have the executive summary. First, we have the introduction, and then we lay out the plan basically on what the process was for the plan. So the first process was to address any transportation issues, then to talk about the strategic direction, which is basically a vision for the plan and the goals and objectives for the plan. And then we talk about the options, which is basically looking at the issues and then converting them into logical transportation projects which could be implemented. And then after that, we look at the funding. We want to be realistic, since this is not a vision plan, it's a constraint plan. We look at the budget which is available for the 2045 till 2045, and then we prioritize those projects. And then finally, we talk about how we did for the plan, like kind of evaluation of the plan. And then we have, I think we have 11 or 12 technical documentation, which gives you the detail, methodology, and what staff had done to develop the plan. It's a very data-driven process, highly technical process. All those things are laid out in the plan, technical documentation or the appendices. So the plan is pretty much similar to the comprehensive plan which localities developed. The only thing is that the difference is that we develop a cost possible plan, or the constraint plan in this plan, in which we actually look at the funding available through 2045, and based on that we prioritize the project and list those projects. There is no implementation in this plan. We just talk about what are the priorities. So the vision, we had a lot of public outreach to establish the vision for our region. The LRTP advisory committee also had interactive sessions. The discussion was in our board meeting as well. So finally, we came up with a comprehensive vision so that in 2045, the transportation system in the Richmond region will reliably and safely connect people, prioritize more equitable opportunities for all to thrive and live healthy lives, promote a strong economy, and then respect environmental stewardship. So it's pretty comprehensive. Then we have the goals and objectives, in which we defined what are the transportation goals for the region. We did a public survey, and based on those, we established 5 goals. So safety, environmental land use, equity, accessibility, economic development, and mobility. And if you see, sorry. Yeah. So within each goals, we have objectives as well. So objectives are basically the mechanism through which those goals can be implemented and can be actually measured through performance measures. So we established objective for each goals. I'm not going into detail of all the objectives we established, but the changes in the regional planning and programming arena in this plan. Before this plan, we had only federal and state allocations, which could be used for the constraint. We had the smart scale, but outside in Richmond, we didn't have the regional authority. So now, since we have CVTA, which was established, I guess, a little bit more than a year ago, we are actually able to implement those projects which we prioritize in the long range transportation plan. So as we all know, the CVTA funds are divided into 3 parts. A local part is 50%, which goes back to the locality. 50% goes for transit for GRTC, and then 35% is regional projects. So those are the projects which we are talking in long range transportation plan, 35%. So CVTA is a big game changer in the region, which we didn't have in the previous long range transportation plan. So talking about the first step, in which we collected the transportation issues in the region, staff did a comprehensive review of the regional and local plans. We looked at around 41 distinct plans reported and studied at the local, regional, state levels. The plans were those which had been completed or were still going through at that time. Along with those issues which were listed in those plans, we also took recommendations which were provided by the LRTP Advisory Committee members. The advisory committee is made of the locality staff, as well as state staff, as well as other advocates from the region. We have, I think, 3 CTAC members as member of LRTP Advisory Committee as well. And for the future issues, which hasn't been identified by any plan now, we have a tool, the Richmond Tri-Cities Travel Demand Model. So we input the population and employment for the 2045, which is future. And we also put the existing population, employment, and the traffic pattern. And based on what it is now, it projects to the future. And we can see which areas get congestions or which areas would show deficiencies in the future. So some of the issues for the future, which were not identified by any plan, those were identified by the travel demand model. So altogether, we got a little less than 1,100 total transportation issues for the region. Out of those issues, 555 issues were considered reasonably significant and were eligible for inclusion in LRTP. So we had a separate discussion with the LRTP advisory group for the project inclusion guidelines, like what to consider, what is reasonably significant. The federal definition is pretty vague on that, but we were able to come up with that definition, and I think I have that in the next slide. Then we had 127 issues, basically those transportation links or corridors which were identified through VTrans, which is the state's transportation plan. And then we had 272 issues which were not directly could be solved by any transportation project, but these were issues related to policy or programs or justification of additional studies or local issues. The policy program plans issues could only be solved. We had multi-layered of those, which some of them could be solved by changes in federal policy, some in state policy, some in regional and local policy. So all those were listed, but those were not considered to have any reasonable logical transportation solution or options for the region. And then we had 135 issues which were directly shared by the public. Some of the issues overlapped with what we already had, but some of them were new issues, and we included those in the plan as well. So we, as I mentioned earlier, we did a couple of surveys to see what the public opinion is. We did the vision regional priority surveys, in which we had 501 completed surveys. Then we did the vision and goal surveys, in which we had like almost 950 completed surveys. The issues map, in which public identified 124 unique locations throughout our region. Multimodal issues, transportation issues were stated in those issues. Then we got 265 unique vision statement ideas for the plan. And we looked at all those, and based on that, we started our vision based on all those comments which were provided by the public. And then finally, we got almost 900 comments for the universe of projects. And based on the public input, we did remove some of the projects which we got a big opposition to. So we had put forward the public this question: what was the transportation priorities in the region? And safety came out to be the topmost priority for the region, followed by environmental quality, accessibility, land use, economic development, and then congestion mitigation. And then also we asked the public the classical question about, if you have $100, what would you spend that on different transportation priorities? And that the table shows you that the bike and pedestrian infrastructure, that was around $20, followed by transit network expansion, highway maintenance, passenger railway service, transit frequency, highway expansion, and freight, and then some dollars were unaccounted for. So I would just like to say that the survey cannot be considered a scientific survey because it was sent to the public through our social media as well as interested parties. So it might not have reached out to all people, or all people, or as you can see that the bike pedestrian advocacy group, like a lot of the people who were answering these surveys belong to that group or supported that infrastructure. So that's why you see that high number of dollars. Then once we had established the vision and everything, we looked at the, as I mentioned earlier, that we need to develop criteria for the projects to be reasonably significant. And with the couple of meetings with the LRTP advisory committee, we developed what we call as the project inclusion guidelines for Connect RV 2045. And this helps us to define whether a project is regional in nature or it's a local project. So these were the criteria which we used. So what makes a project regional? Transit. If it's a dedicated transit right of way, if it's a transit route with high speed or linking different jurisdiction, any new transit centers, those are considered regional in nature, and any park and ride lot, if it's more than 100 spaces, expansion or a new park and ride lot with 100 spaces, that's considered regional. For bike ped, we considered segregated lanes within dedicated right of way to be regional in nature, and then multi-jurisdictional network, which fills significant gaps in existing network, as well as bike ped infrastructure, which would support transit service as regional in nature. Similarly, we had the roads is basically adding or removing a lane, like the HOV lane or bus only lane, realignment, extension, relocation, new interchange modification, new overpass, underpass, and major arterial intersection improvement. So the roads which included in this was basically measure collectors and above, and local roads were not included. We also looked at the intermodal thing. It's basically the change in capacity in any intermodal connect corridors, waterways, or freightways, or rail, passenger rail or freight rail, which would connect the regional hubs like the Richmond Marine Terminal, Richmond International Airport, major railway yards, etc. And new or relocated railway station, passenger rail station, or major improvements. Those were included in the as a regional project. And then finally, the bridges. A bridge had to be structurally deficient to be replaced or rehabilitated, and only bridges which are in the national bridge inventory structures as well as the national highway system were considered. So 16 bridges were fit that criteria, so those were selected. And then we looked at the financial projection of like how much funding is available to implement all these projects. So basically, the first thing in the financial constraint plan is that we have to, the most important thing is to first maintain the existing system. So we have a robust transportation system in the region which we have to maintain. So we had off the top removal of the maintenance dollars. And then we also, the second thing was to take away funds for the local projects, because that we are not considering in the long range transportation plan. So based on the track record for our, which we have in our tip broken down as regional and local projects, we made a split on that. And overall, we had almost $5.5 billion to be implemented in next 25 years till 2024-45. And then we broke it down into 6 years patterns following the VDOT's 6-year improvement plan. So we have the current, which is 2022 to 27, then a midterm, which is 28 to 23, 33, midterm, which is 34 to 39, and then long term 40 to 45. So looking at, let's go a step back. So this is more the graph which you are seeing is basically all the funding, including the off-the-top maintenance. So if we look at that, the $5.5 billion which we have, as well as the maintenance, The highway maintenance takes like 41% of it. New construction is 26%. Transit overall is 16%. State of good repair funds, basically the bridge replacement is 4%, and active transportation is 1%. Flexible funds, I think we have the discretion of using it anyhow. That's almost 12%. So these are the projects, the map you see, these are the projects which were selected or prioritized based on our project ranking process. We have almost 210 projects in all modes, which are included in the Connect RV 2045 plan. So the project breakdown, the universal project is all possible projects, and the cost possible projects are the ones which we prioritize and which has been considered for financial constraint. So for active transportation projects, we had a total of 34 projects, and the constraint plan is able to fund almost all projects except for one. Bridge projects, as I mentioned, structurally deficient bridges in national highway, 16 projects, all of them we are able to fund. Park and ride projects, we have 14 projects and we were able to fund 14 projects. Highway, we had 184 projects, but we were only able to fund 147 projects. Rail, we had 9 projects, but the funding, how it works for rail is basically, it's not broken down by region. The funding is for the overall state or the Commonwealth. So it's not broken down by the MPO. So we don't know what is the exact funding we would get. So that's why the rail projects are listed in the universal projects and also in the vision list, but since we didn't calculate the funding which would be available for rail, it's still in the vision list, not in the cost constraint list. And then transit, we had 11 projects, out of which 6 would be funded. So basically, we had BRT routes, and then we have enhanced capacity route, which is basically 15-minute frequency routes, the same projects twice. So the logic behind selecting the enhanced service route first and not to select the BRT was that obviously transit is a phased approach. So once we have the enhanced transit route implemented, obviously, and then we could look at the full-fledged BRT. But this time we have included all the enhanced transit route and one BRT route, which is basically the route from downtown Richmond to downtown Ashland. That project is also included in the cost possible project or the cost constraint project list. And then the final part of this process is the evaluation of the plan. So there's a few new federal regulation in which we have to evaluate how we did in the plan. So it's a very data-driven process in which we evaluated the performance of the Connect RVA 2045 through 5 broad performance areas. So system-wide performances, the transportation savings, economic impact analysis, environmental justice analysis, and then accessibility analysis. So to evaluate these plans, we actually looked at 3 different scenarios. So base is 2017, which is the existing, the year which we started, which we have the data for. No build is the 2045, which includes the 2045 population, projected 2045 population and employment and all those factors. But it only includes all the projects which are existing and which has been committed through VDOT's latest 6-year improvement plan, which goes to 2026. So anything which has already been allocated funding and which would be built by 2026 were considered in no build environment. And then built is the full implementation of all the projects in 2045 constraint list, all the 210 projects, and we are looking at 2045 population and 2045 employment, as well as all the related transportation data for 2045. So for highway, the system-wide performance, the congested miles of roadways, it's basically the lane miles in which we have what we call in the transportation term level of service of D or more, which is kind of congested in those lane miles. So basically by implementation of the plan, we would reduce 85 lane miles of congestion in 60, Route 60, Route 360, 295, 95, and 64. We have some congestion release in some of the other minor corridors as well, but the bulk is in these 5 corridors. Travel time, there is a decrease in the regional average travel time. Mode share, majority auto trips, but transit mode share is a little bit increasing, not that much, but it is increasing a little bit. And then VMT is the vehicle miles traveled. So if we, the vehicle miles traveled per capita is 19 miles annually, but if we convert that into the region, the annual reduction in VMT would be 25 million miles if we implement this plan. Similarly, transit ridership increases by 31% regionally, and then the person miles travel increases by 58%. That means that people would be taking longer transit trips in the future. Premium transit, basically, this is kind of a thing in which we can evaluate peer regions like Richmond with Raleigh or maybe with Charlotte. So premium transit is something which if there is a light rail or BRT or commuter rail. So at present, we only have Pulse, which can be considered as the premium transit mile in which is 7.6 miles. But based on the implementation of the plan, as I mentioned earlier, we are adding one more BRT ride. So that would increase to 23 miles. Coverage, the transit coverage would be increasing to 38%. It doesn't dramatically shift as the population growth in the region would be more in the areas which transit is not serving than the areas which transit is serving now and in the future. So that's why the coverage doesn't increase much. For bridges, we are replacing or rehabilitating 16 structurally deficient bridges. Park and ride lots, we're adding 2,600 new spaces for the region. Active transportation miles, dedicated miles, we have 53 new miles of active transportation infrastructure in the region now. I'm sorry, we have after the implementation of the plan, we would have a total of 193 dedicated active transportation centerline miles in the region. That would be the increase of 53 new miles from what it exists now. So basically, mainly due to the implementation of the fall line trail, which is a part of the constraint plan in the plan, as well as some other corridors like the spur to the Virginia Capital Trail, and then some other trails as well. And then we also looked at the transportation savings, like what would the implementation of the plan would benefit us. So we basically calculated 3 savings: transportation benefit, which is basically the reduction in auto delay time, truck delay time, and reduction in VMT. And this is once the plan is implemented in full. So it would be an annualized savings after 2045 when the plan is implemented in full. And the dollar values is presented in 2030 dollars because all the projects cost, to make it consistent, we converted all the project cost to 2030 dollars. So that's why the savings cost is also in 2030 dollars. So an annual saving of $485 million operational benefit every year after the plan has been fully implemented, 2045. Safety benefit is basically the savings from reduction in fatal and severe injuries. So engineering, traffic engineers calculate the value of severe injuries as well as fatal injuries. Obviously, life is priceless, but mathematically, I think it's calculated to be $850,000 for each fatality. And based on the implementation of this plan, we would be reducing the fatal and severe injuries, and the total annualized savings for this comes around $120 million annually in 2045. And then we have some environmental benefits as well, basically due to some reduction in the volatile organic compounds as well as the NOx. The environmental benefit is not comprehensively calculated because it was beyond the scope of the plan. We didn't calculate anything which requires the cost of environmental mitigation during the project development phase, or we didn't also include any benefit or harm of the greenhouse effect gas emissions. We didn't calculate that. It was not in the scope this time, but so environmental benefit is 348,000, and it's, as I mentioned, it's not that broad. It just looks at a few things. So altogether, the annualized saving is $606 million. As we all know, the total amount which we are spending is $5.6 billion, $5.5 billion, and 606 million is the annualized savings after the plan has been fully implemented in 2045. And then we also did this for the first time. What would be the economic impact of the implementation of the project? And this is a very specialized topic. So we went to look at nationally available sources. So there was a study, Sharp 2 study conducted by the Transportation Research Board, partnered with AASHTO as well as the Federal Highway. And they had something called as the Econ Walks, in which we could put the projects there and see what would be the economic impact based on the project. So we did that for all the projects combined for the Connect RV 2045. So altogether, the direct and indirect jobs which would be created based on the implementation of all the projects by 2045 is almost 95,000 jobs. So since we have the direct jobs as well as indirect jobs, the wages, $2.8 billion based on direct wages, and then $1.9 billion in indirect wages. So altogether, all these jobs and wages and increase in real estate value and all those things combined, the direct economic impact based on this plan is $15 billion. So for the Richmond region's GDP. Then also, we also looked at the environmental justice framework, in which we firstly developed what we call as the equity emphasis area of the region. So we looked at 6 different categories of people: people of color, people in poverty, zero-car households, older adults, people with disability, and people with limited English proficiency. And based on some statistical analysis, we delineated what we call as the equity emphasis area, as you can see in the pink in the map. So this was based on census tract geography, because that's the level of geography in which we have all these data. That's why you see that since whole of Charles City is in that equity emphasis area, because the census tracts are so big in that area. But overall, the pink area is the equity emphasis area of the region. You can say that it's almost 33% population of our region is within the equity emphasis area. So we have to, based on the environmental justice framework, we have to see whether the transportation funding in those equity emphasis area is in line or proportion with the overall funding within the region. If it's proportional, then that's fine. If it's more than proportion, if it's more, then it's really good. That plan is really equitable. So we had like 63% of projects which served directly to the equity emphasis area, and then 59% of the dollars served the equity emphasis area. So if you look at the per capita spending, transportation dollars spending, almost more than $10,000 per person in the equity emphasis area, and for all persons in our region, that's almost nearly half. So this plan is pretty equitable, as you can say. Looking at the projects, 78 projects do not serve the equity emphasis area. 132 projects serve it out of the 210 projects. And then we also looked at the accessibility. So basically looking at jobs and destination reachable by different modes within a reasonable travel time. So we looked at 30 minutes time for walking, biking, and auto, and we took like 45 minutes for transit. And based on that, we did an assessment for all the built and no built conditions. And the accessibility change, net accessibility gain per capita in the equity emphasis area was 747 jobs, new jobs, and 7.6 destination. But if you look at the region-wide numbers, is 485 jobs and 5 destinations. So again, the equity emphasis area gets more benefit from the plan. Again, the destinations which we included are grocery stores, pharmacies, healthcare facilities, school, colleges, government centers, libraries, and parks. This is a very data intensive process, so that's why we only included those destinations. I guess the next time we might use other destinations like recreations and sports and things like that. So, but that's in the to-do list for the next plan. Looking at the accessibility, the travel time, which is basically the average travel time, which is taken by all trips in our region. We save an average of 10 seconds. It's pretty small savings, but when we multiply that by the total number of trips which would be taken in the region, and total number of people would be taking that, it accounts to 14,000 hours of travel saved because of the new accessibility provided because of this plan. Similarly, we looked at the access to transit by walking and biking with different travel times. So basically looked at the 5-minute increments for walking from 5 to 30 minutes. And then biking, we looked at 10 and 30 minutes increments. So as we can see, walking, the equity emphasis area, that's it's pretty much well served to transit within a walking distance. When you go to 30 minutes walking distance, almost 87% of equity emphasis area is served by transit. Similarly, looking at biking, if you bike 30 minutes, almost 98% of the equity emphasis area is served by transit. A total of 86% of areas region-wide would be served by transit if we bike for 30 minutes. So what's the plan next? As I mentioned earlier, the final public review period just ended yesterday. We had a long, 1 whole month of public comment period in which we went to 6 different locations. We had various opportunities in our website through which public could comment. And we have received a lot of comments, and we are still in the process of compiling it. The Rrtpo Policy Board, we'll be asking the Rrtpo Policy Board for adoption in their October 4th meeting. So now, since we have the CVTA, which is an implementation body, I think this is something new which we haven't done in the previous plan, that we would work with the Central Virginia Transportation Authority to prioritize the projects for implementation as soon as possible. This plan, since we have the Central Virginia Transportation Authority in which we would be able to implement projects, this plan would be accessed regularly. If something is implemented, we put some other projects in that place in our constraint list. So this plan would be revised and adopted and amended in a regularly. So, and then finally, once the plan adoption is done in October 1st, we start immediately with the scope and work for the next plan, which is going to be, I think, 2050. We haven't had a name for that plan yet, but that plan would we are thinking of having something called a scenario planning, in which we access different scenarios, and based on those scenarios we would have prioritized projects. So that's something which would require a robust public engagement, as well as a lot of technical tools which would be developed by the staff to be used in that plan. So, you know, we would start working on that plan immediately. And I think that's all I have. If you have any questions, I'll be able to answer it now, or if you need much more detail, we can talk offline as well.
Thank you, Sulabh. Congratulations on concluding a very comprehensive scope of work here. So a lot went into that, and it continues. It's something that continuously evolve. So thank you for providing this vision. Any questions from the group here? Okay.
A
All right.
couple of thoughts about,
Charlie.
I know the plan is set and we've, it's like we've done a great job at it. I would suggest that we think in terms of monitoring as we move forward. You talked, the last things that you said were your next step is to start looking at the 2050 plan. And things that we need to look at, population growth and the corridors of growth, the jobs, what types of jobs are they, where they are, and are they virtual jobs or are they in-person jobs? That we may be in the middle of a paradigm change on that. The look at the population age, not just where they're at, but the ages. In the suburban areas, Hanover, Powhatan, Kent, by 2045, over 25% of our population will be retired or age 60 plus. In those cases, we may need more on-demand transit because a lot of those folks may not be able to drive to the services that they need. And so those are the things that I would suggest that we look at for the transportation equity in the future.
Thank you. All good points. I've taken a note of that, and we'll definitely try to include all of those in our next plan.
Thank you again. Did you need to say anything? Just moving on. Okay.
Go ahead.
Okay, we are moving on the agenda. I'd like to call to your attention the resolution and appreciation of Virginia Coles for her service to the CTAC. I'll read a little bit of it for those of you who don't have it in front of you. Whereas Virginia Coles has served as one of the League of Women Voters alternate and primary representatives to the TPO Citizens or Community Transportation Advisory Committee from July 6th, 2006 to July 2021. And whereas Virginia Coles during her tenure as a CTAC alternate primary representative represented to the best of her ability the interests of CTAC and the citizens of the Richmond area. And whereas we, the members of CTAC, wish to express our sincere appreciation to Virginia Coles. Now therefore be it resolved that the TPO Community Transportation Advisory Committee does hereby express its sincere appreciation and gratitude this 16th day of September 2021 to Virginia Coles for her leadership and outstanding service to the TPO Community Transportation Advisory Committee. And it will be signed by Chet Parsons, the TPO Secretary, and Upton Martin, the CTAC Chairman. So for those our friends with the League of Women Voters, please express our appreciation to Virginia, and we'll be sharing this with her when it's complete.
Okay, I will.
All right. All right, at this point, moving along, I want to call to your attention the future meeting topics that have been identified, starting with our November 18th meeting and moving along. I'm not saying we're going to cover all of these, but these are things that have been identified. And if you know of any individuals who could help us present some of these topics, or if you have ideas for additional topics or replacement topics for some of these, please share those with us, because we want this to be a useful committee for you and for your communities you represent. And we are just in the information gathering stage at this point and want to make sure that we're providing topics of interest and things that will help shape our decision making going forward.
And Lisa, I would add that if you have any topics, particularly for November, please let me know, because I start contacting speakers almost immediately. It takes that much lead time to get people on board. So if there's something for November that's not on the list here that you think should be, or that you think we should move from November to some other time, please let me know. But otherwise, I'm going to go with the 3 topics that I have down there.
And also, we have not forgotten that we wanted to take a tour of the Richmond port. That is difficult to, during COVID, we've had to put that off, and that's difficult to arrange, but we're going to try to do that probably when the weather is warmer in the spring or whatnot, whenever we can get that scheduled.
It's down there as a scheduled, but a potential topic.
Okay. All right, at this point, I'll pause and see if there are any other member comments or announcements. Okay. All right, with that, just a reminder of our next meeting, which will be November 18th. Same place, same time.
And we will most likely continue with the virtual hybrid in-person format.
Okay. All right. With no additions, we will call this meeting adjourned.
Thank you.
you.